At this stage, I'd like to charge you with loving the Lord Jesus Christ, doing the best you can, loving one another, and guiding and directing and encouraging one another. And that's the charge that I'd like to leave with you today. Thank you. You can be seated. Raymond.
Thank you very much to our leaders and parents and mums and dads and even grandparents that have supported us throughout the year. What you don't see when you, all the list of all the awards that some of those kids have received this year, what you don't see is the hours of work that goes into that in preparation by their, each of the division leaders, their preparation. And once on a Sabbath afternoon, once a month, they gather in the hall and they work through their workbooks, and I know firsthand how much work goes into that because I see my wife doing it, and she has done it for a number of years now as our kids have gone through Adventurers. But now my daughter's going up into Pathfinders, so I don't know what that means for Donna. And if I could just add something that you may not be aware of, the Unstoppable Camporee that we went to. Is that one on, Rich? The Unstoppable Camporee that we took the kids to. The road trip involved some memories as well along the way. We wanted it to be a memory experience, and so we drove down the coast and came back inland, but our purpose for going down the coast was to just expose the kids, because for some of them they had never been outside of central Queensland, just expose them to the broader, not only the broader Australian countryside, but the broader community of the church that they belong to. And so on our first night away, we actually stayed in Mawulumbar Church, and they got to see another complex in a different part of the country. We then took them on down to Cooranbong, and we stayed on the college campus, and they got to experience college church. I gave them a guided tour around the college environs. They got to visit Alan White's home, Sunnyside, and the South Sea Island Museum, and then we took them to Caves Beach late Sabbath evening, and then finally we took them on down to Canberra, and they got to see many of the sights of our capital city as well before we went down into Victoria. And yes, it was a long drive, Steve, I have to acknowledge that, but we were grateful for the Lord's protection in that. Have we got the slide of Unstoppable available? Just the blank slide of Unstoppable. That, if we could put that up, that'd be great. I just want to share a thought with you. The theme of the Pathfinder Camporee we went to was unstoppable. And as those of you who have been involved with Pathfinders throughout your growing up years, you will know that when it comes to a Camporee, there is certain activities, usually half a dozen activities that the kids are led throughout the 4 or 5 days that they are there on the grounds. And so each morning they would do one activity, and in the afternoon there would be another. And this year's theme was the missionary journeys of the Apostle Paul and his unstoppable energy to throw himself into the cause that he had given his life for. And we know that from the experiences that Paul had, he was probably one of the more well-travelled people of his era, of his generation, than anybody else. Most people never went further than a day's walk from their home village. This guy travelled to the other side of the Mediterranean. There weren't too many people that would have undertaken that sort of adventure, that sort of journey. And for our Pathfinders to get to the Unstoppable Camporee, we had to go further than we had ever been before. I want to just share a little passage with you from Paul's own writings, because each of the activities that the kids had to do were somehow themed to something in Paul's life, be it a shipwreck, be it a stoning, be it a beating, be it travelling, or be it sharing and preaching the gospel to people. And instead of being stoned, the kids got rotten tomatoes thrown at them. Instead of being shipwrecked, they actually had to build a ship themselves. They had to actually get enough of the components of the boat together. They had to put together a very large map of Paul's journeys. And they had to it was like a giant jigsaw puzzle. They had to earn the pieces of the jigsaw to put up so they could work out the route that Paul took on his journeys. But Paul was someone who was unstoppable for Jesus. And I think God knew that about him when he called him. And if you know anything about his life, the first part of his life, his adult life, was spent zealously defending the traditions of his fathers to the point he was basically employed as a secret policeman to go around and arrest as many Christians as he possibly could. And then he had his experience where he met Jesus. He personally met the resurrected Jesus on one of these journeys going to the city of Damascus. We call it his Damascus Road experience. And from that moment on, Paul's life was one amazing roller coaster. Let me share some of that roller coaster ride with you. Because he wrote to a group of Christians living in the port city of Corinth on the Greek peninsula. And in his second letter to them, if you want to follow along with me, I'm in 2 Corinthians chapter 11. Paul says this of his unstoppable journey. I have worked much harder, been in prison more frequently, and been flogged more severely, been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. They weren't allowed to administer the 40th lash because that was considered to be dehumanising. So 5 times he received 39 lashes. 3 times he was beaten with rods. And there's a whole story about that. To be beaten by rods by the Romans was to have every bone in your body broken. Once I was pelted with stones. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea, possibly trying to stay afloat himself. I've been constantly on the move. I've been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, and in danger from false believers. I've laboured and toiled and have gone without sleep. I've known hunger and thirst and often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. Besides everything else, I face daily the pressure of my concern for all the churches. But despite all of those things that Paul endured in his life, he remained unstoppable for Jesus. What makes a person that committed that they can endure all of those hardships and still get up from everything that knocks them down, still get up with a smile on their face and say, I'm doing this for Jesus. Pathfinders, you had to go through nearly every activity they did involved mud and water. I think every single activity. And when those activities were over, they had this 2-inch fire hose and they would just hose them off before they came back to camp. Every activity you took on involved some level of discomfort, didn't it? Some level of personal demeanour, if I can put it that way. And at times, you had to go outside of your comfort zone to go through some of that smelly mud, to be hosed off in that smelly river water. You had to endure the heat, and blimey, wasn't it hot down there? You had to endure the heat and the sweat and the flies and all those things, but you did it for an adventure that you were on together. And Paul endured all of those things because of his love for Jesus. So, the question we have to ask ourselves this morning, not only as pathfinders and not only as adventurers, but as adults, as parents, are we unstoppable for Jesus this morning? No matter what life throws at you, are you going to get up again and again and stand up for Jesus. Because I hope that all of you will make that decision to be unstoppable for God. May God bless you as you think about that. And I would just like to invite our singers to come up and lead us in our song, Side by Side We Stand.